Hey, good evening. So, at the end of each module that I run with folks, I like to give a kind of a stream of consciousness review of the module, right? So, I'm going to give a non-spoiler review of the module, this kind of high level thing here, and then a kind of DM spoiler review and kind of a little section, a little bit what I thought about fighting with Strahd at the end for the grand finale. I presume that's not really a spoiler. I assume you know at some point you're going to have to fight this dude, right? That's kind of goes without saying. But let's just kind of go with a non spoiler review to start with, right? So a lot of folks like to say that this is one of the best modules in D&D, right? It was an older module that I want to say, was it version 2, version 3? I don't know. I think that's when I took a long D&D break when it first came out because I played mostly version 1 way back when I was a younger tyke and played around with it occasionally. I would come back for a short run here and there. So I can't say I got too deep into 3 or 4. Um, but obviously, I'm pretty deep into 5. Um, and to be honest, it's interesting. I just kind of saw a video by someone trying to say that they think D&D 5 is running out of time. I, you know, it's an interesting idea. I think people have been calling for that for a while. I think there was. I don't want to give too much for that other guy, but I kind of think D&D 5 has a long way to go. It's extremely popular. I think that folks, the whole point of D&D 5, it's going a slight tangent, and I apologize. The whole point of D&D 5 was that D&D was so fractured between version 1, 2, 3, and 4. Everyone liked a bunch of bits in it, right? And everyone had their favorite version of D&D. The whole point of D&D 5 was to try and figure out a way to bring all those parts together and have optional rules that if you liked certain aspects of D&D 4, there's some of those rules you can shoehorn in, right? Same thing with the other editions. But I think in that sense, D&D 5 has been extremely successful. I have no idea why you would go to another version of D&D at this point. As long as they're making money, and I don't see how they're not. It's extremely popular. I think any call for D&D to go to version 6 or whatever is I don't see it. I mean, haven't they learned their lesson by constantly remaking D&D? I think they have. And I think they're going to milk this cow as long as it goes. So until D&D becomes unpopular, I don't see them doing too much to retire this and go on to D&D 6. But that's a side point. Let's get back to Strahd. I'm sorry, that was like on my mind because I just watched about 5 minutes of this video before I came on here. So what's good about this module? Should you play it? From a high level point of view, absolutely. I mean, it it is one of the most such a thematic vampire module dungeon crawl type of thing. Um, I think it worked very well. I think the folks who played it really enjoyed it. Um, Looking back, there was probably a couple aspects that, anytime you DM these things, you can think of something that you might have could have done better. But overall, I mean, yeah, it was a great module. Um, would say it's probably one of the better ones in 5. Um, I'll get to it a little bit in the DM spoilery review. Um, I do think the DM has a little bit of work to this, and I'll talk about that shortly. So, um, I think if you're a DM, yep, you can definitely play this. You can definitely make it your own. I think there's definitely some work that you'll have to do to make it get there, right? But all the elements are there that I don't think it's a heavy lift for the DM to make this a great experience for the players. Um, you probably want to play this, somewhere close to Halloween. I think it took my group almost 20, I don't think it was 20, it was like 18 or 19 weeks to play this. Um, so in that sense, yep, it's going to take some time to play, but it's a great ride, and it definitely just fits that gothic vampire theme pretty perfectly. So I don't want to get too deep into that because I want to go on to talk about this in a bit more detail. So if it's just a matter of what do I think? Should you do this? Absolutely. I don't think you need a super experienced DM to run it. I don't know if I would run this if it was your first time at bat as a DM. But beyond that, I think it's a pretty easy thing to run and you'll get there pretty quickly. So with that being said, let's go into the spoilery DM point of view of this, and then I'm going to talk about the end of this. So let's talk about the adventure itself. So spoiler, if you don't want to, if you're going to run this, if you're going to be a player in this, go away, go away. All right, here we go. As a DM, as you look at this module, and let me see if I can get the map real quick. Well, I guess there's a couple things. Let's start with this as being a DM. They start by having this little I guess it's okay. I mean, what you do is at the beginning, the players are going to get their fortune told at some point, and when they get their fortune told, it will tell them or tell you as a DM where certain items that the PCs are supposed to pick up, where they're supposed to be on the board, and also where the bad guys are and so forth, right? So where the final battle is going to take place and that kind of thing. I guess it's okay. you know, I mean, on one hand, I think they try to do this for replayability type of thing, that the items will be at different spots, and that way you can run it multiple times. I guess, right? I guess you could do that, but realistically, it doesn't change that much that it's really that much of a replayability thing. um, you would have more of a lift than just saying, well, these items are blank, 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 right? There's still way other things that you'd have to redo or at least tweak so the players wouldn't have a very similar experience if you try to run this too many times. So in that sense, I thought the tarot card thing it was good thematically, but it was probably, you know, they probably put more thought into it than it was actually worth. That's just my opinion. But it's okay. So once you do this tarot card reading where you see where certain key items and the bad guys are, then you do the actual going into the module itself. And you can never find the map when you want it. But that's okay. There it is. Thank you. So, you know, going through this map and the different adventures they find here, there are some part of this which really, I thought, fit the theme, the whole vampire Dracula theme that you're going for here pretty perfectly. It it was great. It was definitely worth your while, right? Do I really? But that being said, I do think there were a certain part of this that seems to be tacked on. It's a complaint I think I have of a lot of 5e modules is that um, it feels like each little section just feels like a little too tacked on as opposed to the entire story. Don't get me wrong. The majority of this story is great. I think especially as you got into the higher levels, I think that they were kind of struggling a little bit for some things to do, and it was like, okay, explore this area, explore that area, and it was a bit too loosely tied together for me, but it's okay. You can make do with it for sure. It's great stuff. Um, I guess in more detail, right? When you start off, you're going to go into the PCs will probably end up going to the main village here. They'll meet a fortune teller. They'll meet another small town. From there, you can spin them off in a number of different small subplots for adventures to go on. You probably don't have to send them everywhere. You can if you want, right? But they got sent to a lot of these places, not all. And it was good, but it definitely felt like, okay, once you got so many weeks in and you got to the main village, it was like, okay, I got a kind of a spoken wheel. Like this is your center of the wheel. Which direction do you want them to go? And then you, as the DM, could probably point them in which ones you feel like running, right? In that sense, after a bit, towards the end of it, I'm like, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this and let's get towards the end, which is the castle itself. So once you get to the point where you've leveled up the characters to a decent level, it can get into Strahd's castle itself, Ravenloft, right? Here's the next discussion I want to have. So, whoever did this module, as far as the castle is concerned, really needs to have a little bit of a talking to. Why is that? Well, as you will notice, so here's like a sample of one of the maps for Ravenloft. We'll go probably another map. Here's a better example. While this map is very nicely drawn, don't get me wrong, and the map of the castle is very complex, right? There's just a lot of staircases going up, down, all over the place. I mean, you take a look at this bottom floor, you got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven staircases. Let me count again. It might be eight. One, two, three. This goes down. Holy crap. I can't even count staircases. One, two, three, four. There's a lot. There's a lot. Depending how you want to count them. There's a lot. While this map gives you as a DM a feel of how it's all interconnected, this is not a map that is playable on something like Roll20. So if you were to buy this in D&D Beyond, like I got it through D&D Beyond, um, how do you'd have to remake this map from scratch. I mean, you just have to. And all the maps are this way. These maps are just not usable that you can just copy paste it into Roll20 or whatever and you're good. And the map of Castle Ravenloft is complex enough that I don't see how a PC, if you were just to do this verbally and you're not going to use a tabletop software to stream whatever you want to call it to your players, right? So they can see the map, and you're going to do it traditionally where you sit around a table and how you would draw this would be just crazy. I mean, I guess you could do it on a flat board, but I mean, it's it's complex. It's complex. So as my players were getting through to this, and I was getting to this point where I had to build the maps for this. Um, way before the characters were going to get there, but I knew I had some work here. I started Googling to try. I mean, I figured I couldn't, obviously, was not the first one to run into this problem. Somebody has a map somewhere. And if you dig around the internet, you will find people that will have a map that they drew. Um, just to give you an idea of the problem of it, if you go to roll 20, uh, they have, you can buy just the maps for $10, right? Whereas normally they don't do that. They want you to buy, of course, the whole module through roll 20, whereas I've got it through D&D Beyond. So, but for this particular module, you can spend $10 and the roll 20 will sell you just the maps. Strongly recommended. No doubt about it. Just because for you to try and create this on your own, you're going to spend a lot of time. The $10 is definitely worth it. They give you the maps. They already have the lighting, the walls drawn for the advanced lighting, line of sight stuff, and it's plug and play. It's a beautifully done map. Um, so yeah, I would go that route. So this aside, once you've got the map, you will spend, assuming the characters go through the entire module. My son said, and he's right, they spent half the time going through the castle because it just took that long to go up and down and try and get most, if not all, of the nooks and crannies of this dungeon, or I should say the castle. So you're going to spend some time with it. Once you've gotten through that, so you've gone through whatever spoken wheels you want to get them from the main town and decide which adventures you want them to take, no problem. You get through most of the dungeon, or excuse me, the castle. Now you gotta do the last fight with Strahd. And there's a couple, if you scour, um, and again, the internet and Google it, there's a number of websites that have some good ideas on how to play Strahd. And it's interesting. I hear people say Strahd isn't that hard to beat and you gotta beef him up. And also that he's pretty tough as is, depending who you're dealing. I think Strahd is a ridiculously tough adversary. And I do think there's some ways that you can play him to kind of really tick off your players. And one second. That's how you know you've got an impromptu thing when your son calls down to you in the middle of a recording. Sorry about that. At any rate, so getting back to Strahd and fighting with Strahd himself, right? So, how do you play Strahd, right? How, why do you have this differences on how you should play him and how you can? Some people think he needs to be buffed. Some people say no. Is he really tough? I think people make some good points. So let's take a quick look at Strahd because it was interesting. So let's start by being, realistic, right? If you're someone who is um, newer to D&D or whatever. So for people who think you need to buff Strahd, they make a certain point, right? Strahd has 144 hit points. He could have more, depending if they dealt with the Heart of Sorrow or not. Um, let's say that the group did, and if you decide to DM it, you'll see what that is when you read about it. But let's assume for right now he's 144 hit points and an AC of 16. Um, he's not that hard to hit, right? If you got a group that's like ninth, 10th, 11th level, um, they can whack on a 16 pretty easily, right? So what do you got to do to make this a good fight? Um, okay, so some things to keep in mind, right? One is he should have some level of cannon fodder, whatever, because to start with, Strahd has the ability to scry on the group, and you should assume that he has been. He knows what's going on in his lair. He knows they're there, and he's been watching them. He knows he's got some power, right? These characters. He should have a certain level of cannon fodder with him. Doesn't have to be anything ridiculously strong, right? Doesn't have to be a horde of vampires. Doesn't have to be a anything like that, right? I start off with wolves, and as you'll see, Strahd could summon all kinds of crazy stuff as things are going on. Just can. You'll see. So first, he should have some level of minions to be around him. I started off with wolves. Um, Interestingly, the characters during the campaign, they had a good guess where he was when they first could have met him. They elected not to meet him and went to stay somewhere else in the castle. So Strahd, scrying on them and being a level 20, I should say a 20 intelligence, he basically ambushed them. He got some of his minions together, set up an ambush when they came out of hiding, and had his minions just kind of wear these people down. In the meantime, because he's Strahd, he has things like greater invisibility, so he can be invisible, and he can chuck fireballs at him. He's got fog cloud to make sure that various things that could create sunlight that the characters might have won't bother him. He can also have mirror image if he so needs it. Some good stuff, right? So that being said, here's a key thing that you got to take a look at. All right, he has legendary actions, no shock. He can, so 3 times outside of his turn, when some other character takes a turn, he can move his speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Are you kidding me? So he can move after a character moves, he can move his speed. He can do that 3 times between his turns. And then, as one of his layer actions, the dude can pass through walls and ceilings as if they weren't there. Okay, okay. So he can move through walls, and he basically can move another 90 feet in between his normal moves, on top of maybe going invisible, on top of whatever else the dude can do. So, and the cards were drawn this way, but if you really want to make this a ridiculously hard battle, here's what I did at least. Um, Let me see. Let's go to here. I need to go to. Oh, come on. Where is it? Yeah, be this way. If I have to, I'll just flip and forget it. If I have to, I'll just bring it up. Seriously? All right, be that way. Here you go. Well, here's the one map. I guess you really can't appreciate it on this map. Let me bring this up. Give me 1 second. Let me roll to roll 20 for a second. Okay, here's where you can really appreciate it. What the hell's drawing on my map? Go away. So here you are again in, say, the catacombs. Each one of these boxes is a crypt, um, with walls, with doors closed, and you got to make a strength check to open these doors. So I had the final battle here. There was no way they were going to catch him. No way. Between the minions I had on these guys, right? And the fact that you could have Strahd could just move through walls for all his movement. And he can move an additional 90 feet between his turns. You could just simply have Strahd just move around this board. They weren't going to find him. They weren't. I mean, Strahd could just like move into a tomb and hang. And I did that at one point where they were looking at him, looking for him. He phased through a wall, went into one of the tombs, and the players just went on past because they didn't know he could do that until one of them saw him do it. And, line of sight is obstructed everywhere. So between the players having poor line of sight in this area, the only way the players as a whole are going to have good line of sight is if they start to break up, which is what they did. So the players are going to be broken up on different parts of this board. I mean, this goes down obviously for a while. It's a pretty big map, right? So you can move around this map and just drive them insane, right? You can move through walls and have them check out tombs, you know, um, until he puts a little, either he heals up or he decides to move again. Whatever the dude wants to do, the odds of they're going to find him here are pretty rare. Now, I'm sure if someone sees this, they'll come up with some sort of spell that would help with this somehow. But the players aren't expecting that, right? And like, uh, in the case of the group that I had, there was 4 players, and I gave them an NPC. 3 of the players were, basically fighters. You had one sorcerer, you had um, a paladin, you had a fighter, and a thief. And a thief moves a lot too, right? But that being said, like I had them simply just, I had him by the time the minions got done with them, right? Between all the bull crap I threw at them to wind them down a bit, you know, um, Strahd just moving around playing games with them never would have caught him. They wouldn't have. You know, he he ran out of spells, right? Because he was chucking fireballs. Some were dispelled or whatever it was, but he could have ran circles around him. And then you play with the initiative order, right? You can move around in such a way that you ambush certain people at certain times, and they'll never get a react, right? They're not going to be able to react in time because they're over there, the other group's somewhere else. You phase forward through a wall next to the guy. You use an action to go and bite him, slash him, do some damage, whatever you want to do, and then you move away before that character's turn comes up, right? I mean, extremely difficult in this environment. The only reason the group in this case defeated him is because I played purposely suboptimal, right? So, and that's tough for me to do. But basically, one of the players decided, um, screw this. And they went into the brother's tomb. And I'm going to get tons into the backstory, but he went into the tomb of his brother where Strahd was crying over that tomb the day before. So he went into here, and just with the history and what went on with the group, Strahd took offense to that. His parents' tomb is down here as well. So if they went into there and started messing around, he would have taken offense to that as well. So the fact that they went into that tomb, um, and like Strahd didn't know whether he was going to desecrate his brother's tomb or not, but I just made the call that he did not want them in there and flew into a rage and was just going to try and kill them. And he didn't care to a degree. So because the way the players played it, I thought it was a good reason to have him stop doing all the phasing through walls and just try and take the people apart out of um, anger and to a certain extent arrogance. It was worth it, right? I thought it was a good play. He still almost killed the group. I think every character went down at some point, and they were able to get them back up. So they were pretty much on their last rope by the end. Um, I still probably could have killed him because after the after they got through with Strahd, they could have fought some of their minions. They vampire minions. They got initiative first. I let them kill Strahd. I I don't remember if it's true in this in the book. I have to double check. But I made the call that if they killed Strahd, his minions would die with him. Right. So the undead minions died with him, and then they had to fight the sub boss. We'll call it right. Um, you know, we'll call it Strahd's butler, right? Who was a pretty nasty character on his own. He took three of them down, and they were down just to two characters, and they were able to take him out. Right? So it was an extremely hard fought battle. I'm sure the group will remember it. But I think the key point to all this is that when you look at Strahd, part his castle is such a rat's maze that his ability to phase through the walls, whether you go into that dungeon area or some other part of the castle that you want to fight him, his ability to phase through walls and to constantly move when it's not his turn, yeah, you're going to have a heck of a time finding him if you're playing it right and if you are um, basically gaming the initiative order and the characters are forced to kind of break apart. You force the characters to break apart. There's a lot of ways you could play it, depending how the characters play it. But but darn, he is. I I don't know. I guess I have to go into my bag of tricks and look through the magic user spells to see what they could do. Um, a haste spell might work for the characters. There's a couple things you could do to definitely improve your odds. But if you don't know what you're going up against, and they shouldn't when they go into to fight them, and they don't have like I'm sure if you knew exactly what Strahd did, players could come up with a plan. Players are always resourceful. But when you don't, they either have to be lucky and have a good amount of abilities to fight him, or Strahd's just going to play commando tactics and take him out one by one. And the whole dungeon is basically built for that. That's about it. That's about it. So, luckily, the players were able to come up with a thematic way of getting him to stop using that tactic. But yeah, play it, enjoy it. I think as a DM, now, I guess that's my point, right? As a DM, the module doesn't really give you great ways to think. You got to make sure you have an idea what to do with Strahd before the players come in. If you're just going to have the players fight hand to hand with Strahd at the beginning and not do any like sneaky stuff, yeah, he'll get cut to pieces. No doubt about it. But Strahd has more than enough things. And with a 20 intelligence, he's no dummy. He should know how to fight and he can run rings around characters. All right, I beat a dead horse. You get the idea. Um, Fun module, definitely play it. The players will probably love it. You will have some work to make sure you understand how you want to use Strahd to make sure the players have a hard time with them. Um, Strahd should be trolling the characters throughout the module, so they really want to kill him by the end. Um, yeah, that's about it. Enjoy. So, thanks. Have a good night, and talk to you soon.